if my dog looks at a bike and he's calm and I say, nice, and I feed him over the top of the head, I am feeding him in a way that I want him to be. So I'm not going, whoa, good dog. Oh, yeah, bike's all right. No, I want calm. So you see these things and you're like, right. I see a bike. I shall look at her for food. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dog Sense. I'm your host, Kathy Santo, and I am here with Stacey!
Awesome.
Stacey has been training at the school for over a decade, but she's been a dog trainer for far longer than that. We started out together when we had the little school in Ramsey.
The little school.
Now we have the huge campus.
Yeah.
And Waldeck. And of course, I'm here with my co-host, Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, everyone. Super excited today. So awesome. Stacey's here with us.
It's a good time. The Three Musketeers.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Go long. Prepare yourselves.
All right.
Timer on just to stay on the time. Let's carry on.
All right, guys. So for today, we wanted to talk about, so Stacey and Kathy both teach this awesome class at the school, Reactive Rehab, right? So we wanted to give you guys some of our top training tips and tricks for when training with a reactive dog.
I think a good place to start is, what do we mean when we say reactive, right? I mean, there's always a spectrum of behavior. So you might have a dog who just is like the intense starer, they're really skeptical about stuff. And then you have dogs that go much faster from stare to lunge or lunge and bark. And then we also have dogs who get so cranked up, they might actually lunge, bark. And because they can't get their mouth on that, they might actually start grabbing the leash or you.
Yeah. And so there's stages is what she's talking about. And some of them blow through all the stages fast and some go slower. So there is opportunity. I'd like to say that I'm not in love with the label of reactive dog. Like I feel like it just burdened you, right? Like you could say, because people say, oh, it's my reactive dog. And for trainers, we need to know that, right?
Sure.
But I'd like them to say, this is my dog who's working on handling his emotions better. You know what I mean? I think it gives you more confidence as an owner.
Sure.
And you're not just labeling your problem. It's called reframing. Let's reframe the problem. Yeah. And speaking of frames, I think that a dog who has reactive issues, it's what's outside what we consider normal.
Right.
Right. So if a truck drove by us and backfired and we were like, oh my God, right? That's normal. But what's not normal is that every single truck, we immediately act that way before it happens. So there is a normal range that we're looking, and this is outside of that.
Yeah. It's probably a good time to mention that sometimes you see it in other areas, like dogs that are reactive with dogs, they might be really intense about tennis balls, right? So that intensity factor comes into play there.
Yeah. And then also the reactivity can come from a lot of different places, right? A lot of times what we'll see is the dogs who hung out in dog parks for a long time. And now at first they were excited, right? They wanted to see that other dog when they're walking past them on leash. But then from there, it built into frustration. And now we have a reactive dog. So it doesn't always need to come from aggression. Sometimes it can come from a very friendly dog. So that's important to realize as well, is the where it came from, which can help us then make a training plan moving forward.
It's a lack of optimism, isn't it, though? It's the dog says, I don't think this is going to come out well for me. Like, I don't believe that this is going to be a good thing. And so then that's your other. I think when we talk about solving behavior, I think one of the key things is that we say to the student, what is a dog who doesn't act like this? What does he look like? How does he act? Yeah. And they say, oh, he doesn't bark when he wants something, frustration tolerance. He can lay on a bed when the doorbell rings, calmness protocol, right? So they need to have in their mind, because they may not know. And because the dogs aren't living with trainers, they're not seeing it when we see it. We see it when it's a blink. And they see it when it's a hurricane. So that's the purpose of this episode, to give them more understanding when it's a little problem. Because obviously, it's easier to fix a little problem than it is a big problem. Great.
Yeah. All right. So you guys want to talk about, so when dogs are social, right? So how can the owners better react, and how can they provide a better state of mind for the dog?
Well, you know what? Let's talk right now, because your dogs are barking, right? So this is going to happen to people in their house. So the dogs are barking and they're responding at something. Typically, what do you get? You get people going, I'm not going to yell because I have a mic. Be quiet, right? Stop it. And then what does that do? That makes them more excited. Oh my God. And not excited in a good way. Like, oh, she's upset about this too. Right. So I better get louder and louder. So when you get something like barking, you want to react in a way that's not going to make your problem worse.
Right. We're trying to bring the energy level down instead of adding to it and making it greater.
And so in this case, it might be Sarah, if we weren't recording, going to get the dog and bringing it in the room with her and working through sounds, identifying what the cause of this reactivity burst was. And it's good that we're having this happen because I think people think reactivity is always aggression.
Right.
But it's not.
Yes.
It could be barking. It could be spinning, right? So it's any behavior, again, outside that normal. And Sarah could say, well, this barking is normal. I want my dog to bark when somebody pulls up to deliver a package. But if it's not, or if it continues, or if there wasn't good reason for this barking, then she has to dig deeper into why it's a reaction response.
Yeah. And I think it's so important, especially if you're out on a walk too, they will feed off your reaction. One of the first things we look for when someone says, my dog is reactive on a walk, are they tightening up on their leash when they approach whatever the trigger is, right? It could be a squirrel, it could be a bicycle, it could be a car. It doesn't always have to be another dog or person. It could be other things in the environment. But the first cue to the dog is, first of all, we're going to see the hard stare first, right? Then it's the leash tightens and the dog's like, it's on. Either they're getting nervous, right? They're getting scared, they're getting worried, or they're getting aroused, because some dogs like the reactivity, right? They like to bark their head off because then that dog leaves.
And there's all the chemicals that flow in their body from it. And don't you think, though, that the people pay into this bucket before the dog even responds with their words? Like, oh, no, this is going to be bad. He's going to blow up at that dog, right? Or just by not breathing. Like,
that's right.
It is so important to get people to control themselves.
Agreed.
Before they can actually get to the dog.
You know, now's a good time to mention that having the connection before any of this starts is super important. If you're on a walk and you don't talk to your dog at all while you're walking, you only talk to your dog when things start to get tense and you're anticipating a problem or they are reacting. Right. That's a serious problem. We have to be in communication with each other as we're walking. Otherwise, the dog's so detached from you, there's no way they're going to be responsive once they've started to escalate.
Right. And who can blame them? Like, you've been ignoring them. It's like somebody who's texting, right? And then you're asking them to respond and they can't because they're thinking about something else. That is pretty much every dog walk, except for people who train with us.
Yeah.
So all right. So from there, so let's get into, so how can people practice with their reactive dog at home? What can kind of be some achievable goals for them? What are some of the first steps? Of course, we're going to suggest find a local trainer in your area who you can work with. But what are some things, your best tips for people that they can start to practice at home?
Me. Can I go?
You're a guest. You can go
my
first.
Turn. I've been talking a lot about vacuum cleaners and landscapers and other things that we have around the house that we have a little more control over as a way to help the dog achieve calmness and connection before we try to deal with that level 10 dog in the street, right? So if you have a dog who gets a little crazy about the vacuum, and let's talk about what a little crazy is, the staring.
Yeah.
Right? The watching. Some dogs might have some families might have the chaser.
Right.
And some families have the, I'm going to kill the vacuum.
And stillness.
Yes.
People don't read stillness. They think stillness means they're calm. Oh, no. You got to look at the whole picture.
Yeah. Yes. Usually when there's stillness, you have a little bit of the watching, right? Starting them. I'm watching you from over here. So, you can control though, your distance from the vacuum, your distance from the landscaper. And I like to talk about 3 things I can control in dog training: how far I am from the distraction or the trigger, how great my treats are, and how hungry my dog is.
And how much attention you're paying. We'll add 4.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, I think this is a different episode. We must do another episode on reactivity in a multi-dog household.
Oh,
because that's a whole nother kettle of fish, right? You guys got it easy. You got one dog. He's acting like this. You are easy street, man.
He's a cake.
Oh my gosh. But it's like people who have twins, right? You see that. I remember the first time I saw twins in a stroller, this woman had, I'll never forget, it was like a KB toy. And one was crying and the other one was happy. And the crying one looked at the happy one and slapped her in the face. Now they're both screaming. This is at the checkout. It was amazing.
Okay, that is a beautiful lead though into like, because we kind of want to talk about how we all have had reactive dogs, right? I have 2 twin reactive dogs, right? So I've got littermates who are both reactive, and we had to work through it separately, right? So we'll do another episode on this, but if you have 2 dogs who are being reactive on a walk, focus on one first. Work on all this stuff with one first. Once they're in a good spot, once the other dog is in a good spot, then you combine it.
Yeah, and she means, I want to clarify this, Sarah, you mean you're walking both dogs separately. We're not saying have both dogs and just work with one.
Yeah, right, exactly. Divide and conquer.
Or if you want to do it, have somebody else on the other end of the other leash who is going to do this correctly. And now, since we're talking about it, let's talk about that. Dogs are social creatures, right? And so when they're out with another dog, and let's say they see something and they bark, and let's say you're out with your friend who doesn't have a reactive dog, and they're like, oh my God, it's like, I don't know, a sheep. And they look at the other dog like, is the sheep okay? Yeah. And the other dog's like, it's a sheep. It's fine. And then the dog who was going to react didn't. And he went, oh, okay, it's just a sheep. Now you may need to shake off, right? But he chills out. Now, in the absence of another dog, guess who they look at? Us. Yeah. Yep. And they're like, and if so, it's back to what we said earlier. If you see the sheep and go, oh, shit, it's a sheep, right?
right.
And then the dog is like, oh God, she's upset too. I better react. Yeah. And I don't want people to say my dog is reacting to protect me. Can we get rid of that?
Oh my God.
He's protecting me from the sheep. Dude, he's never seen that before.
Yeah.
He's actually responding to your really crappy vibe that's going right down the leash into his collar and his body.
That's a huge thing. A lot of people think their dog, I hear it all the time, they think their dog is being protective. And then you have to kind of explain to them, listen, unless your dog has been trained in protection work, your dog is not protecting you. There's not, this is not going to, if a scary man walks up to you on the street, do not rely on your dog to protect you, right? The barking is helpful, right? But if they're not trained for it, that's not what's actually happening. They might be nervous. They might be scared. They're barking, right? They're doing something in reaction to the, whatever their trigger is, but if they're not trained in protection, don't rely on that.
And I think it happens like one time you're in a dark parking lot, your dog blows up and it happens to be right. That one time, it was somebody that you felt was like sketchy, right? The 7,000 other times was not valid.
Yeah, so exactly.
We all just agree on this.
And, I like to say at that point too, like the why part doesn't necessarily matter. Yeah. The solution's going to be the same. The protocols to follow to solve the problem are going to be the same. Right. And let's face it, at the end of the day, most dogs are going to do what's best for them. They're taking care of priority one. They're probably trying to protect themselves.
That's what I was going to say that too. Like, listen, if anything, they're protecting themselves. They don't really care about you.
Or it's not a compliment because they think of you as like a bone.
Exactly.
They're property, right?
That's an awesome point though, right? That's exactly. So that also tells me that your dog has no faith in you as their handler. They don't think that you can handle this at all, which is also why they're reacting.
Or that you're saying this isn't really a thing. You have no say in it. I've decided I'm reacting. I'm acting.
I like to think about like the mother in ShopRite where the kid is totally flipping out. And you don't really want to hear the mother doing this response. Now, listen, if you calm down, when we get home, we'll have some ice cream. Now I'm going to count to 3. Right. You don't want to hear that. You want to hear the leadership style of, we're leaving.
Yeah.
Right. Take them by the hand, walk them out of the store. Yeah. We're done. Not negotiating with the terrorists. Not going to happen.
Great dog trainers make great parents. Amen. I think so. Yep.
I'm banking on it. I'm hoping.
I can tell you a few more twins slapping each other's stories, and then you will not be having kids. All right. Awesome. So let's talk about rehearsing calm, because I think this goes under the radar. People want the dog to be calm, but then it's like, I know this is like my dog is terrible getting into the car to go to the vet. Right. And then you ask the big question, how often do you practice getting into the car?
And what kind of treats were you using?
Right. Yep. And do you ever get in the car and not go to the vet? And they're like, epiphany. So I want to practice calm in the house. I want to practice it when you're paying attention, when you're not paying attention, and then gradually turn up the volume on the distractions that you're asking them to go
like
through.
the vacuum.
Yep.
And maybe it's you recording your vacuum on your phone. Maybe it's having Alexa. Okay, it's not happening.
Oh, good God.
Because I say, and I'm like, okay, crap. But there's none down here. Okay, I can say all I want. Alexa, Alexa. You can have Alexa play a vacuum noise, play it low, right?
Yeah.
Do things like that. And you want to also have the discussion with yourself that it is okay. We three give you permission to not practice it. Right. We give you permission to take a holiday. Take an emotional holiday for your dog and for you, which means maybe you don't take him for a walk. Now, people get all bent out of shape about this. They're like, what? You got to take a walk? You can, number one, you can take him outside and let him go to the bathroom and bring him right back in the house. Done. Yep. Number two, you can find physical ways in a house or an apartment to exercise your dog.
Yep. Oh, separate episode.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Well, we have. Well, okay.
Plug
for our next, our one of our other episodes too. Though, go check out our Canine Gym at Home episodes. Right. So we do talk about this stuff. We have a ton of episodes on that too. So go check out the Canine Gym episodes for this podcast as well.
And I just think that a lot of people don't see and I appreciate it when they're like, we got to find vacuums. We're going to go to a vacuum store. We're going to go to a vacuum convention, right?
Yeah, no. Not that
Maybe you just don't have to do it. Maybe you just freaking Swiffer your house, right? Forget the vacuum or take the dog out and have somebody else vacuum. Ooh, wait, that's nice.
I can't do this. You have to do it.
Yes. And you can tell them that Kathy and Sarah and Stacey told you you're not allowed to vacuum for a few weeks, so they have to do it. I like it.
Yes, and taking that break can be really important for your mental health, your dog's mental health, all that good stuff. And then when you have when we're ready to come back to it, take it slow, right? Do the recorded sounds. Don't go right back to the same thing where you're just flooding your dog. You're just like, you have to handle the vacuum, right? They've already shown you we can't handle the vacuum, right? So then take it slow when you do head back into it. We don't want you to have to avoid these things forever, but you have to make a training plan. You have to have goals and know exactly what you're doing when we're then going to reintroduce this trigger to the dog.
And it goes for the reactivity on a walk as well. Yep. Like if your dog is reacting at dogs, put him in the car and drive somewhere where there's no dogs, like at a parking lot, or change the time that you walk. If you know that Mrs. Lewis walks her little tiny 7,000-year-old white poodle on the front lawn without a leash every day, don't go there.
Exactly.
When she's out.
Yep.
Or at a different time.
And don't forget the power of getting off territory, right?
Yeah.
You have a dog who blows up in your neighborhood. Pretty much 100% of my students in Reactive Rehab class tell me, Stacey, I took him to a different neighborhood and guess what? He didn't bark at a single dog. And I'm like, no, really? How many weeks have I suggested that in class? Wow.
Okay, something really important there though too, right? So when that does happen, and a lot of times I'll see that like when people bring home newly adopted dogs and they say, oh, for the first couple of weeks, he was fine. Don't take that for granted. When you do go to that new neighborhood, if your dog is not barking when they see another dog, reward the heck out of that, right? That's where you have to start before you then bring them back to, again, the patterned reaction where they always bark at the red house in the corner because it's got a golden outside or something, right? And also, if you're bringing home a new rescue dog or whatever, those first couple of weeks are so important. That's their honeymoon stage, right? That's where they're trying to figure out what the rules are around here. What can I get away with? What can I not? And that's where you want to reward them don't take it for granted. If they walk past another dog and they're not barking their head off, reward the heck out of it. Build value for you, not for the reaction and for them to all get all amped and aroused, getting to bark their head off at that other dog.
Right. And the squeezy pouches of baby food, I used to use jars. Now they come in squeezy pouches.
Oh, nice.
Those
Did
are
you
amazing.
See Skippy's making a squeeze pouch of peanut butter?
Ooh.
I almost texted you last night.
Kathy is thinking, go to the store later. Now I know.
A case.
Eric said, what do we need at Wegmans? I'm like, okay, now we know. A case of those.
Got it.
But I have had dogs who are afraid of things, and I would sit in the car with them in a parking lot and they'd go bicycle and I'd go jar baby food, right? Start licking. So create that conditioner response. Yeah. But also let's talk about this. So I had a student who got a German Shepherd and she picked up the dog in another state and drove. And on the way down back to home, they got out at this place. It was really like an outdoor eating place and they had horses and blah, blah. And the dog spooked the heck out at these horses, like literally lost it. And she came back. She's like, I need a plan. I need a plan.
I need
how
a
to
horse.
make this dog not react, right? And I'm like, all right, let me ask you a question. Do you own a horse? No. Do you know anybody with horses? No. Do you travel to horse country frequently? No. I'm like, then leave it alone.
Right.
If it shows up with Great Danes, then we'll fix it, right?
Right.
But I am willing to say if it is not something that I need to do in my life with my dog will never see a horse, then I'm not going to go search him out. It's like that. Do you remember a long time ago, puppy socialization?
Yes.
And 50 new people a day, right? And all these people, and you had to find a guy with a hat and a woman in a wheelchair and a clown riding a unicorn, and you made yourself freaking nuts, right? Because you were like, I have to get all the things on my checklist. And what you had at the end of it was sometimes a puppy who was like, you know what? I had no idea. The world was so scary. And I am not optimistic about a thing now. I just like to go with my crate.
Yeah, it's a little too much.
Yeah, you got to be careful with stuff like this. Bringing a dog into a conditioned state in a positive way should happen with the things that you need to do it with. And then,
triage.
Yep.
Triage. Kathy used to say that word a lot. Triage is important. I also want to mention that pattern, like Sarah was saying, of rewarding the dog for the absence of reactivity, super important. I think it's helpful too to do that with things your dog has never reacted at. Build a pattern, right? So when you see a bicycle and you're like, my dog has never barked or lunged at a bicycle, we're good. Build a pattern of, ooh, new visual. Wow, look at that, have a cookie. So that if you do bicycle, skateboard, and man in hat, then when it is a dog, you already have a pattern of that visual cookie.
And we talk about it's mark and treat. So, and what's ever important, this is like next level. If my dog looks at a bike and he's calm and I say, nice, and I feed him over the top of the head, I am feeding him in a way that I want him to be. So I'm not going, whoa, good dog. Oh yeah, playtime. No, I want calm. So you see these things and you're like, I see a bike. I shall look at her for food. That's it. So the way that you reward it has to be in line with what your expectation is. Now, if you're doing protection training with your dog and you saw the bite suit, let's crank him up, right? Oh, bite suit, that's right? Not doing that. I'm doing nice. Don't ever think that's exciting.
All right, I think we touched on everything there we wanted to hit on for the reactive stuff. So, all right, as always, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to like, rate, subscribe, tell a friend, and share this episode with people who need to hear it. Our mission with this podcast is to continue creating an awesome community of dog lovers and learners. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye, everybody.